Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
my dad.
Okay.
My dad.
Your Honor, can I ask a leading question?
If you don't ask.
My dad.
Wait 1 second, Mr. Menendez. Okay, let me ask.
No, he was in the process of answering, so there's no need to ask him.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
My dad.
Idiosyncrasies of that microphone. If you get too close, it pops. You know that?
Yes.
If
yes.
you get too far away, we don't hear you.
That's right.
Okay. So would you put yourself at a middle distance, if you can? I think you should come in a little closer.
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay? All right. Mr. Menendez, where do you live?
Los Angeles County Jail.
And how long have you lived there?
3.5 years.
And during the 3.5 years that you have lived there, on how many occasions have you been in sunshine?
10 times.
Overruled.
10 times?
10 times.
And for how long a period on each of those times?
40, 45 minutes.
And what's the last time you were in any sunshine?
4, 5, 6 months ago.
Is that why you're so pale?
Probably.
You're not sick.
No.
You don't
No,
have
I'm
any
not.
skin diseases.
No.
Do you know who Dr. William Vickery is?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And how long have you known him?
Over 3 years, 3.5 years.
And what is he by profession?
He's a psychiatrist.
And is he someone that you've seen regularly while in the jail?
Yes, he's my psychiatrist.
He's your psychiatrist?
Yes.
I think you better come a tiny bit closer. Thank you.
For over 3 decades, the names Lyle and Erik Menendez have been synonymous with one of the most shocking crimes in American history. Two rich, handsome brothers from Beverly Hills who took the lives of their parents with shotguns. The motive, as the world was told, was pure greed, a cold-blooded plot to get their hands on a massive fortune. They were sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole, a verdict that seemed to be the final chapter of their story. But what if that story, the narrative that has defined them for more than 30 years, is just plain wrong? What if the real key to understanding what happened on that night in August 1989 has been buried this whole time? A secret letter written by a teenage Erik Menendez long before the incident has finally been found. This single piece of paper, a desperate cry for help the jury never saw, details horrific and ongoing mistreatment. It's now at the heart of a new, explosive legal battle that could change everything. Along with other shocking new claims, this letter has forced the legal system to look again at a case most people thought was closed for good. Could this be what finally sets them free? Today, we're exploring the latest, most dramatic turns in the Menendez case, developments that have already changed their sentences and could change their future forever. This is the story of the secret letter that could finally free the Menendez brothers. For over 35 years, the story of the Menendez brothers was set in stone. They took their parents' lives for money and would end their days in prison. But what if it's all a lie? A secret letter written by Erik Menendez long before the incident and never shown to the jury has just been found. It details horrific mistreatment and is at the center of a new legal battle that could overturn their conviction. Is this the key to finally setting them free? The night of August 20th, 1989 was quiet and typical in the wealthy Beverly Hills community. Inside a sprawling mansion, José Menendez, a powerful entertainment executive, and his wife Kitty were watching a movie. Jose was a big shot, the head of a record label that had signed artists like Duran Duran, known for his ambition and his success. Around 10 p.m., their two sons, 21-year-old Lyle and 18-year-old Erik, burst into the room. But they weren't there to watch the movie. They were armed with 12-gauge shotguns. What happened next wasn't just an incident, it was devastating. The first shot hit Jose in the back, causing him to lose his life instantly. The brothers then turned on their mother. Wounded, Kitty tried to crawl away, but they just kept firing. In total, Jose was shot 5 times and Kitty was hit 10 times. Her remains left almost unrecognizable. The brothers were so intense about it that police initially thought it was a professional mob hit. The level of damage was just staggering. Then it was the brothers themselves who made a frantic 911 call. They claimed they had just gotten home from a night out and discovered the horrific scene. They sounded hysterical, like two sons who had just found their parents were gone. To the first cops on the scene, they looked like grieving children, victims of an unbelievable tragedy. The city was stunned. Beverly Hills was supposed to be safe from this kind of serious crime. Theories started flying. Was it a business deal gone wrong? A mob execution? The police were under huge pressure to solve a crime that seemed to challenge the American dream itself. The Menendez family looked like they had it all: money, status, 2 bright sons. But behind the perfect facade of their mansion, a dark and twisted reality was about to come out, one far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. In the days and weeks that followed, the police investigation would take a sharp turn, shifting away from unknown perpetrators and toward the 2 young men who first called 911. In the days after the incident, Lyle and Erik really sold the part of grieving sons. They wept at the memorial service, held up by friends and family who couldn't imagine their pain. But behind the scenes, a very different story was playing out, one that quickly made investigators suspicious. Within days of their parents' passing, the brothers started spending their inheritance money with a kind of wild urgency. They went on a lavish spending spree that became a key part of the prosecution's case. Lyle bought a Rolex, a Porsche, and a popular restaurant in New Jersey. Erik hired a full-time tennis coach and traveled to compete in tournaments. In just 6 months, they burned through an estimated $700,000. This didn't look like grief. It looked like 2 guys who were suddenly, deliriously free. This wild spending was a huge red flag for the police. The brothers said their father would have wanted them to live their lives, but detectives saw it as a clear motive. The inheritance was worth about $14 million, a sum that prosecutors would argue was the only reason they took their parents' lives. The narrative started to change. These weren't victims. They were cold-blooded opportunists celebrating their payday. The real turning point, though, came from Erik's therapist. Overwhelmed with guilt, Erik confessed everything to his psychologist, Dr. L. Jerome Oziel, detailing how he and Lyle had planned and carried out the incident. Dr. Oziel, who later claimed he was scared for his own safety after Lyle allegedly threatened him, started recording his sessions. These recordings, the Oziel tapes, were a bombshell. On them, the brothers talked about the crime in chilling detail. Dr. Oziel's mistress, who knew about the confessions and also felt threatened, eventually went to the police. That sparked a legal fight over whether the therapy sessions were confidential. Normally, what you say to your therapist is protected, but a court ruled that because Lyle had threatened Dr. Oziel, that privilege was gone, and the tapes could be used as evidence, with the spending spree as evidence of motive, and the confession tapes as a smoking gun. The case came together. On March 8, 1990, Lyle was arrested. Erik, who was in Israel for a tennis tournament, turned himself in a few days later. The facade was gone. The story was no longer about a tragic mob hit. It was about 2 sons accused of taking their own parents' lives in the most serious way. The stage was set for one of the most sensational trials of the 20th century, a trial that would become a battle between 2 completely different stories: greed versus mistreatment. Section 3, the trial and conviction: greed versus mistreatment. The first Menendez trial, which started in 1993, had the entire country glued to their screens. It was broadcast live on court TV, turning the whole thing into a real-life soap opera. The prosecution, led by Deputy District Attorney Pamela Bozanich, pushed a simple, powerful motive: greed. They painted Lyle and Erik as spoiled sociopaths who got tired of waiting for their inheritance. They argued the brothers carefully planned the incident, bought the shotguns days before, and then faked the 911 call. That spending spree was their star evidence, proof that the brothers were celebrating, not mourning. But the defense, led by the tough-as-nails attorney Leslie Abramson, fired back with a shocking and disturbing counter-narrative. They didn't deny the brothers took their parents' lives. Instead, they claimed it was an act of imperfect self-defense. For years, they argued Lyle and Erik had suffered from horrific mistreatment by their father, José. The mistreatment, they alleged, wasn't just physical and emotional, but involved inappropriate conduct. Erik gave gut-wrenching testimony describing years of inappropriate conduct by his father, starting when he was just a kid. Their mother, Kitty, was portrayed as a deeply troubled enabler, an alcoholic who knew about the mistreatment but did nothing to stop it. The defense argued that on the night of the incident, the brothers were terrified their parents were about to harm them to keep the family's dark secret from getting out. They said their father had threatened them, and the actions were a desperate preemptive response born from a lifetime of terror. This wasn't about money, Abramson argued. It was the tragic end of a family nightmare. The court even heard from their cousin, Andy Cano, who testified that Erik had told him about the mistreatment when they were kids. The public was completely divided. Were the brothers cold-blooded perpetrators or mistreated victims? Their emotional testimony was convincing to some, but others saw it as a calculated act. The first trial ended with 2 deadlocked juries, one for each brother. Some jurors believed the mistreatment claims and voted for manslaughter, while others were convinced it was first-degree taking of life. The judge had no choice but to declare a mistrial. The second trial in 1996 was a whole different ballgame. The new judge, Stanley Weisberg, severely limited the defense's ability to even talk about the mistreatment. He ruled there wasn't enough evidence to prove the brothers were in imminent danger that night. Without the full context of the difficult situation, the defense's argument was crippled. The prosecution could now focus almost entirely on greed, and their path was much clearer. This time, there was only one jury for both brothers. Without the manslaughter option being properly explored, the outcome was swift. Lyle and Erik Menendez were found guilty of first-degree taking of life. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The story, it seemed, was over. They were sent to separate prisons, expected to end their days there. And for decades, that's where things stood, until a piece of paper, hidden for over 30 years, showed up and threatened to change everything. For nearly 30 years, as Lyle and Erik served their life sentences, the public narrative was frozen. They were the greedy Beverly Hills perpetrators. But behind the scenes, investigative journalist Robert Rand, who covered the case from the start, never stopped digging. In 2018, his hard work paid off. While going through the belongings of the brothers' cousin, Andy Cano, who had passed away, Rand found a letter. It was handwritten by Erik Menendez and sent to Cano. The date on it was crucial, 1988, a full 9 months before the incident. This wasn't just some old letter, it was a bombshell. In it, a 17-year-old Erik describes the torment he was suffering from his father. He wrote, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in." You can't overstate how important this letter was. One of the biggest problems for the defense during the trials was proving the mistreatment claims. The prosecution had successfully argued that the whole mistreatment story was just a lie made up after the incident to avoid prison. They kept asking, if the mistreatment was so bad, where was the proof from before the incident? Well, this letter is that proof, written by a teenager to his cousin. Long before he had any reason to cook up a legal defense, the letter is a real-time account of his state of mind and the alleged inappropriate conduct. It backs up the core of the defense's argument that the difficult situation was real and had been going on for years. It was a cry for help from a kid in distress, not a calculated lie from a perpetrator. The juries in both trials never saw this letter. Andy Cano had testified in the first trial that Erik had told him about the mistreatment, but the prosecution tore into his credibility, suggesting he was just lying for his cousin. The physical letter would have been powerful, tangible proof to back up his story. The brothers' lawyers have since argued that if the jury in the second trial had seen this letter, it could have changed everything. It might have given at least one juror enough reasonable doubt to reject first-degree charges, possibly leading to a manslaughter conviction, just like in the first trial. The discovery of this letter set off a legal firestorm. It became the centerpiece of a new legal challenge, a writ of habeas corpus, filed in May 2023. The argument was that the brothers' convictions were unjust because this crucial evidence had been hidden. This wasn't just a minor detail, it was evidence that could reframe the entire motive for the crime, shifting the narrative from greed back to the terrifying world of mistreatment the brothers had described all along. The discovery of Erik's letter was huge, but it wasn't the only new piece of evidence to surface. Around the same time, another explosive allegation came out, offering completely independent support for the brothers' claims. Roy Rosselló, a former member of the popular 80s boy band Menudo, came forward with a shocking story of his own. In a 2023 docuseries, Rosselló alleged that he too had been subjected to inappropriate conduct by José Menendez. Rosselló claimed that when he was a teenager in the band, José Menendez, a powerful executive at their record label, drugged him and engaged in non-consensual conduct. This wasn't a family member who could be accused of bias. This was a third party with no connection to the incident, describing the exact same predatory behavior. Lyle Menendez himself commented on the news, saying it was something they'd heard rumors about for years and that it would have made a difference at trial. Armed with both Erik's letter and Rosselló's testimony, the Menendez legal team filed a writ of habeas corpus in May 2023. This is a powerful legal tool used to argue that a conviction was fundamentally unfair. The petition argued that these two new pieces of evidence were so significant they likely would have changed the trial's outcome. The petition landed with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, then led by George Gascon. Gascon, known for a more progressive approach, announced his office would conduct a thorough review. Instead of just dismissing it, they took the claim seriously. By early 2025, Gascon's office was actively supporting a resentencing hearing for the brothers. This set the stage for a dramatic legal showdown. At the same time, a clemency request was pending with California Governor Gavin Newsom, who indicated he would wait for the results of a parole board risk assessment before making a decision. For the first time in decades, it seemed like the official stance on the case might be shifting. CTA. This case has been debated for decades, and now it's taking a turn no one saw coming. What do you think about this new evidence? Do you believe the letter and Rosselló's testimony changed the story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to stay updated on cases like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. It really helps us continue to bring these important stories to you. Just as it looked like a path to freedom was opening up for the Menendez brothers, a political shift slammed the brakes on the whole thing. In the November 2024 election, District Attorney George Gascon was defeated by Nathan Hawkman, a former federal prosecutor with a much tougher stance on crime. One of Hawkman's first moves was to reverse his predecessor's position. He quickly filed a formal opposition to the brothers' petition, making it clear he would fight to keep them locked up. Hawkman's office argued against a new trial on several grounds, calling the new evidence a Hail Mary attempt. First, they said it was too little too late. Hawkman argued that the letter from Erik wasn't truly new because the defense should have known about it during the original trials, especially since his cousin testified. Legally, new evidence has to be presented without a substantial delay, and waiting decades weakened its power. Second, the DA and OPS's office challenged the impact of the evidence. Hawkman said that these new claims didn't change the core fact of the case. The incident was premeditated. He argued the brothers planned what happened, bought weapons, and waited for their parents, actions that define first-degree charges. In his view, the mistreatment allegations, even if true, don't legally excuse a premeditated act. He bluntly called the brothers' claims self-serving lies and a bold-faced lie. This argument ultimately won out in court. In September 2025, a Los Angeles Superior Court judge rejected the brothers' bid for a new trial. The judge acknowledged that the new evidence did slightly corroborate the mistreatment claims, but ruled that it wasn't strong enough to have changed the trial's outcome. The ruling stated the evidence wouldn't have canceled out the jury's finding of premeditation and deliberation. This was a devastating blow, affirming the prosecution's long-held position the planning of the crime was what mattered most. The door to a brand new trial had just been slammed shut. While the fight for a new trial was hitting a dead end, a different legal battle was unfolding, and it had a shocking result. This path came from a California law for youthful offenders, which allows people who were under 26 when they committed their crimes to be resentenced. Since Lyle was 21 and Erik was 18, they qualified. Despite opposition from DA Nathan Hochman's office, the defense team won a resentencing hearing. In May 2025, after emotional testimony from family members who argued the brothers were rehabilitated, a judge made a landmark ruling. He resentenced both Lyle and Erik from life without parole to 50 years to life. This was a massive victory. It didn't mean they were free, but for the first time in nearly 30 years, it meant they had a future. The new sentence made them immediately eligible for parole hearings. For the first time, the brothers had a real, tangible chance at freedom. But that hope was quickly and harshly crushed. In August 2025, both brothers appeared before the California Board of Parole Hearings. After a marathon session, the board denied Erik parole, saying he still posed an unreasonable risk to public safety. The very next day, Lyle was also denied, with the board citing his history of deception, minimization, and rule breaking. Both brothers now have to wait until 2028 for another chance. Then, just weeks later, in September 2025, came the final blow, the official rejection of their petition for a new trial. So, as of today, this is where things stand. Their life without parole sentences are gone, but the parole board has already said no, and the legal path to a new trial is closed. Their only remaining hope is a future parole board in 2028 or a long-shot clemency grant from the governor. The roller coaster of 2025 gave them their greatest hope in decades, only to snatch it away. The story of the Menendez brothers is once again a tangled mess of legal wins and stunning losses. The discovery of Erik's 1988 letter and the testimony from Roy Rosselló completely changed the context of the case for many, offering the strongest proof yet that the mistreatment they described was real. This new evidence was powerful enough to fuel a movement that got their life without parole sentences thrown out, giving them a shot at freedom. And yet, the system has pushed back hard. The new district attorney, Nathan Hochman, sees the brothers as manipulative perpetrators who haven't taken responsibility for their crimes. The courts have agreed, ruling that even if the mistreatment was real, it doesn't legally excuse a premeditated incident, and the parole board has deemed them unfit for release. So where does that leave them? Stuck in a frustrating legal limbo. They are no longer sentenced to end their days in prison, but their freedom is still a distant dream, blocked by a skeptical justice system. The battle for their future is far from over. Their legal team and family have vowed to keep fighting, encouraged by growing public support and the belief that the full story has never been properly told. The case now boils down to a deeply divisive question. What is justice in a case so layered with difficult circumstances and serious crime? Does the intensity of the incident cancel out any sympathy for the lifetime of mistreatment that may have come before it? Or is 35 years behind bars enough for a crime committed by two young men who, as their family insists, are not the same people they were in 1989? The answer will forever define one of the most infamous and unsettling cases in American history. I want to note that I've used softened language throughout this video to comply with YouTube's content guidelines. The reality of this case involves extremely serious allegations and circumstances that are difficult to discuss without using more direct terminology. But these restrictions help ensure this important story can reach the widest possible audience while maintaining respect for everyone involved.